At the close of World War II in 1945, the world grappled with the immense aftermath of the conflict. Adolf Hitler was dead, along with his closest confidants, Heinrich Himmler and Joseph Goebbels. Yet, many high-ranking Nazis remained alive, held in captivity by the Allied forces. The question then arose, what should be done with these individuals who had orchestrated unimaginable atrocities? The answer was to bring them to justice in a court of law, right in the heart of Germany. This led to the Nuremberg Trials, a series of historic proceedings that sought to hold Nazi war criminals accountable for their actions. Nuremberg was chosen as the site for these trials not only because it had emerged from the war relatively unscathed, unlike many other German cities, but also because of its symbolic significance. Nuremberg had been the stage for numerous grand Nazi rallies, and it was fitting that it would now serve as the place where justice would be meted out to those responsible for the horrors of the Third Reich. By holding the trials in Nuremberg, the Allied powers aimed to bring a powerful sense of closure to this dark chapter in history. The trials were a collaborative effort of the four main Allied nations, the United States, Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and France. However, this presented a significant challenge. Each of these countries had its own distinct legal system, and they needed to create a unified approach to try the defendants. The solution came in the form of the London Charter of the International Military Tribunal, crafted in August 1945. This charter established the rules and procedures for the trials, ensuring that the defendants would be given a fair trial with the right to legal representation. A tribunal consisting of 4 judges, one from each of the Allied countries, would preside over the proceedings. The London Charter also clearly outlined the charges the defendants would face. These charges were divided into 3 main categories: crimes against peace, which involved the planning and initiation of aggressive wars, war crimes, including the brutal treatment of prisoners of war, and crimes against humanity, which encompassed the systematic murder of civilians, most notably during the Holocaust. The Nuremberg trials spanned several years, from 1945 to 1949, but the most significant phase, known as the trial of the major war criminals, took place between 1945 and 1946. This period saw 22 prominent Nazi leaders brought before the tribunal, including Hermann Göring, the founder of the Gestapo, Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy Führer, Joachim von Ribbentrop, the Nazi foreign minister, and Albert Speer, Hitler's chief architect. 2 additional defendants had been indicted, but circumstances prevented their trials. Robert Ley, the head of the Nazi labor organization, committed suicide before the proceedings began, while Gustav Krupp von Bohlen und Halbach, an arms manufacturer, was deemed too mentally unfit to stand trial due to senility. Beginning in November 1945, the tribunal meticulously examined the evidence and heard testimony over 216 court sessions. The world was confronted with the full extent of the Nazi regime's brutality as the crimes of the Third Reich were laid bare. The trial culminated in October 1946 with the delivery of the verdicts. 12 of the defendants, including Göring and Ribbentrop, were sentenced to death, 3 received life imprisonment, 4 were given lengthy prison terms, and 3 were acquitted of all charges. After the Nuremberg trials concluded and the sentences were carried out on October 16, 1946, the fate of the executed Nazi leaders' bodies was handled with meticulous attention to avoid any possibility of them being honored as martyrs by future Nazi sympathizers. The executions were conducted in the gymnasium of the Nuremberg Palace of Justice, where 12 of the condemned men, including prominent figures like Joachim von Ribbentrop and Wilhelm Keitel, were hanged. Hermann Göring, who had been sentenced to death, evaded execution by committing suicide the night before using a cyanide capsule he had secretly obtained. Following their deaths, the bodies of the executed were transported under heavy guard to a crematorium in Munich, approximately 100 miles away from Nuremberg. This crematorium was chosen for its relative anonymity and security. Göring's body, after his suicide, was also taken to the same location to undergo the same process as the others. At the crematorium, the bodies were reduced to ashes, a process that was carried out with the utmost discretion to avoid any publicity. The cremation was swift, and the remains were kept under tight control to ensure that no one could claim them or use them for any form of tribute or memorial. Once the cremation was complete, the ashes were gathered and transported to the Isar River, a small, inconspicuous tributary near Munich. In the early hours of the morning, under the cover of darkness, the ashes were scattered into the river, allowing the remains to be dispersed and carried away by the current. This final act was symbolic, signifying the complete and utter dissolution of the physical remnants of these men who had orchestrated so much suffering. The Nuremberg Trials marked a pivotal moment in the pursuit of international justice. While they could never undo the vast suffering and loss of life caused by the war and the Holocaust, they set vital legal precedents that would influence future international trials. These trials demonstrated that even those in the highest positions of power could be held accountable for their actions, paving the way for subsequent prosecutions of war crimes, such as those that took place in Japan, Rwanda, and the former Yugoslavia. By officially recording the crimes of the Nazi regime, the Nuremberg Trials ensured that the world would never forget the atrocities committed during one of history's darkest periods.